Hello, family. I am back again because I have something else I want to share with you. And that is about, I know I've already talked about this, but it's coming back up again, the importance of being able to follow the Spirit. Being able to hear the promptings that come in, being able to trust the source of where those thoughts and ideas are coming from, being able to act on them without hesitation or doubt in an appropriate way. I can tell, I just have this impression and this feeling that as we go further down the road, in the world that we live in, that is going to be more and more and more of a critical skill for us to have. The good news is you can develop it. I spent a long time, a huge amount of my life, anytime I'd have a thought or an idea, I'd be like, was that the Holy Ghost or was that just me? Was that the Holy Ghost or was that just me? And over the last few years, I have been blessed to have really great mentors that have helped me to develop this skill. And I've had a lot of time to practice it, especially. So I remember not a few, it's been some years ago, when Andrea Skorup and I were, we still are friends. But back when we lived by each other, I remember being on the phone with her one day and asking, and I was doing something in the kitchen and I couldn't find my measuring spoons. They were gone. Like I didn't have any measuring spoons and I was in the middle of making something. And I was kind of flustered and I was on the phone with her and I said, I can't find my measuring spoons. And she goes, your measuring spoons? And I said, yeah. She says, I have them. I said, what do you mean you have them? What do you mean you have my measuring spoons? And she's like, oh yeah, I was at the store yesterday and I just had this impression that I should buy an extra set of measuring spoons. And I thought it was kind of weird, but I followed up on it and yeah, so I have them. So I'll just run those over to you right now. And if I've already told you this story, I might have already told it, and I'm sure you've probably heard me tell it to other people because it's been something that's stuck with me over the years. So if you've already heard it, I'm not going to apologize for telling it again because there must be some reason that you need to hear it again. So, or I need to tell it again, whatever. So I remember thinking at that time, gosh, I wish I could be like that when I grow up. Like I wish I could be really good at listening and following those promptings. I wish I could be as good as Andrea is at it. And so over the last few years, I have really made a conscious effort to develop that skill and to grow it. And so I just want to share a couple of things with you about how you can also grow that skill of following your inspiration and following your intuition. Because truly those are separate things. Your inspiration, your ability to receive inspiration and your ability to understand and perceive your intuition are different skills, but they use the same senses. And so it's another piece of discernment, right? So just so you know, you have subtle senses just like you have physical senses. You have a sense of sight, you have a sense of smell that you smell things with, you have a sense of taste that tells you if something's good or not, you have your sense of hearing, and you have your sense of touch. And everything that you perceive comes into you through one of those senses. If you didn't have any of those five senses, you wouldn't have an environment at all, right? So it's really important to understand the working of those five senses. Now, those are your physical senses. You also have subtle senses that correspond with each of those. And they're the reason that I can say, okay, now I want you to picture a sweet roll. Okay? Now, immediately you're going to have probably an image come to your mind through your subtle sense of sight. You're probably going to see it. If you don't see it, it's totally fine because some of you might smell it instead. Or some of you might just have that like feeling of stickiness or sweetness or whatever comes to your mind when I tell you that image. That's going to give you a clue about those subtle senses. And all of us have one subtle sense that's stronger than the others. So when I ask you that question, depending on what comes to your mind is going to be a clue to you what your strongest subtle sense is. Okay, so for me, my strongest subtle sense is my sense of smell, which is kind of weird. I didn't understand it for a long time. But now it's kind of like how when you see a dog sniffing out something, like they'll just go down a path, like they'll sniff their way following something because it's their instinct, right? And for me, my sense of smell kind of gives me a strong instinct about things because I can smell a rat, right? So you can also find out in your, like listening to people's language, kind of what their strongest subtle sense is. Like people will say, like I just did, I smell a rat, or that smells fishy to me. Something smells fishy here. Or they'll say, that sounds good to me. Well, that tells you, does it really sound good to them? No, but they are receiving information through their subtle sense of hearing. So their mind is perceiving it as something that sounds a certain way. I'm trying to think of like the language for your subtle sense of, oh, that feels good. That feels good to me, right? That'll be your subtle sense of touch that's telling you that something is okay or not. So, pay attention to those senses. Pay attention in your language and start to notice what might be your most strong sense of, which is your most strong subtle sense, okay? Because your goal is to develop all 5 of them. I actually have a whole course that's about this. This is what I've learned over the course of the last 10 years of my life and how I've practiced it and studied it. And this is why it's so important for you to get this. This is so important for you to get this. Okay? Because otherwise you're going to miss stuff and you're going to make mistakes. If you develop all 5 of those subtle senses, you're going to win. Like you'll make fewer mistakes, you'll get stuff right, you'll be in tune to the spirit, and you'll be in tune to your intuition. When things feel like they're right, you'll know when to act when you need to. You'll know when to not act when you when you shouldn't, okay? You'll also be able to, in your receiving of the promptings from the Holy Ghost, you'll be able to recognize them because you'll be good at it. You'll be good at it, okay? I just was looking up in the scriptures all the places it talks about perceiving, because that's the word that's used most commonly in the scriptures about these subtle senses. And just to give you an idea, like it says in Matthew, Jesus perceived their wickedness. He perceived their thoughts. Things were hid from them that they perceived not. I perceive that thou art a prophet. Okay, so that's something that's